what lessons are learned or to be learned after the election? The fact that the opposition did not win those elections.
First of all, of course, the elections occur in a climate. So the climate in general, in the sense of rule of law, equality, justice, and a just competition between the political parties. So the climate is important in Turkey. After the change of the political system in 2017 from the parliamentary system to a very special case of presidential system, not presidential system. In fact, before the parliamentary system itself was not pure parliamentary system. So from a very deviated or fake parliamentary system, we were transformed to a fake presidential system. And according to this presidential system, the power is in the hands of president himself. It is not like American way of presidential system or other presidential system where there is a clear separation of power. In Turkey, under this constitution and the experience in last 5 years showed a lesson that the power has been accumulated in the presidential palace. So the judicial system is under president's control, while in other real presidential system, judicial system is there to check and balance the executive power of president. Similarly, legislative power of the parliament is under the control of the president because of the majority of the parliament was in the hand of the government party. So with this, we had a very polarized political climate in Turkey. In fact, the opposition, when we formed six-party alliance, nation alliance, the main objective of this alliance was to try to prevent this polarization and try to establish an inclusive political atmosphere and an inclusive political alliance. In Turkish modern history of 200 years, there were basically three main trends. One is conservative trend based on the traditional values of Islamic tradition as well. The second one is nationalistic trend, which is a composition of these traditional values with the modern nationalistic tendency approaches. And the third is secular leftist trend. With these five other leaders, what I try to achieve, and together all of us, what we try to achieve is to bring these political trends around a table and try to form a base for a national reconciliation of 200 years polarized atmosphere. So it was not just an election alliance. While in this sense, the government and President Erdogan, had another coalition. Similar transfer there. The difference was the autocratic tendencies of tradition of conservative, nationalistic, and leftist secular trend against the freedom-oriented or liberty-oriented conservative, nationalist, and secular leftist trend. These two has competed. Those who were from the same tradition, like myself and Erdogan, the difference was he was basically trying to defend conservatism or traditional values based on an autocratic approach. I have been defending, when I was chairman of AK Party, and today, I have been defending a freedom-oriented conservatism, liberty, in the sense of dignity of human dignity, respect to individual rights. Not just state, but citizens are important. Public order is important, not state order. While Erdogan was raising trying to create a more authoritarian climate, referring to Islamic values, the same values, but the interpretation was different. Same for nationalistic approaches. Madame Akşener tried to formulate a more democratic nationalism, democratic conservatism, from our perspective. And Bahçeli was a typical exclusivist autocratic nationalism. Kılıçdaroğlu was defending a more inclusive democratic secularism, while Perinçek or many other political groups supporting Erdogan, they were defending autocratic secularism. So the difference was there. The lesson what we learned during this formation, although opposition lost the election, in the sense of as a result, but at the same time, opposition has shown with this practice that all these different political traditions came together on a democratic basis. This is very important achievement.
Would you, now the elections are over, like there is this sense, at least from an observer based in London or anywhere, that there was an opportunity, a golden opportunity for the opposition to win.
Yes.
And this opportunity being missed. Why was it missed? Was it missed because Mr. Erdogan succeeded to twist, to make the whole election pro-Erdogan or against Erdogan, or because actually the six parties table coalition failed to present a charismatic leader?
Both. To be frank, therefore I said political climate. The climate election occurred was not a fair climate. On one side, therefore, I said there was an authoritarian government power controlling everything, controlling 80-90% of the media, where it was impossible for us to talk. For example, I am a former prime minister. You are a journalist. If you were if you were working on TRT, official TV, for you as a journalist, it would have been interesting to get my views regarding election or any interview. For last 7 years, TRT did not show even my face to the people. During the election campaign, my voice was not heard by the people through TRT, which is the most widespread, while every day, hours and hours, Erdogan, Bahçeli, Perinçek and others, they were talking. So this is national TV company. It belongs to us, to the nation, because we are paying our tax to pay the salaries of TRT. But on TRT, typical Middle Eastern or other regimes, there is no voice of opposition. This is not democracy. This is not a fair election. Similarly, before, when I said fake parliamentary system, it was much more democratic than today. Why? Minister of Interior Affairs, Minister of Justice, Minister of Transportation, they were resigning 3 months or 2 or 3 months before the election in order to have a very fair competition atmosphere. In 2015, I ran 2 elections as Prime Minister of Turkey. My Minister of Interior Affairs, Home Affairs, my Minister of Justice, my Minister of Transportation resigned 2 or 3 months before the election because these 3 ministries were strategically important ministries for a fair election. But now, the most radical ministers trying to impose, to vote for Erdogan and People's Alliance, they were Minister of Justice and Minister of Interior Affairs. So this is one of the reasons why for this failure. The second, I am not only blaming on them. On our side, it would have been more result-oriented if we had present ourselves. We have produced several documents, but these were very integrated, systematic documents. These should have been submitted to the people through a much more effective communication means. We were not able to do this. But in order to do this, you have to have freedom of press. There is no freedom of press in this sense. This is basically the differences. And the most important issue until the 2 weeks before the election, opposition was advancing, but the psychology of fear created by the government and by President Erdogan, that if opposition wins, there will be a threat of terror. This was provocated by certain manipulated, manufactured videos. They were manufactured. Erdogan himself said that this is a manufactured, a fake video. But these had affected the psychology of the people, and also a fear that as if the religious values, religious symbols like headscarf and freedom of religion would be negatively affected if opposition wins. In fact, out of these 6 parties, 5 of them were conservative parties, and nobody even could create any threat to freedom of religion. And there were several documents we guaranteed to people that nobody can touch the headscarf, nobody can do anything against freedom of religion. But the monopoly of propaganda by the government prevented our voice to be heard by the people.
Mr. Ahmet Davutoglu, Your Excellency, you said normally, like the government, even you when you were Prime Minister, you changed, or like the Minister of Home Affairs, Justice, they resigned before election. But now what we see is that actually Mr. Erdogan changed those ministers after the election. Right?
After the election, yes.
So what is your reading of the measures that been taken by Erdogan after the election? Why did he do this?
It was a constitutional requirement to change the ministers of Home Affairs and Justice and Transportation, and not to appoint any political figure. They would have been. They were supposed to be neutral, not any member of any political party. After the election, Erdogan made some changes in the cabinet.
Why did he make those
because
changes?
he realized there are some reasons. You know, the former cabinet before the election, they were basically a cabinet composed of different factors. Like some were friends of son-in-law Berat Albayrak, some were there because of Bahçeli's insistence, like Süleyman Soylu. So it was a much more. In fact, there were not many members of cabinet who worked before during the good years of AK Party, and they were not. They didn't have any success story, because that cabinet was formed to support Berat Albayrak as the new potential president after Erdogan.
You think so?
Yeah, at that time, 2018. But now, Erdogan has realized that these type of choices are not valid anymore. So they try to appoint some ministers who had some respect because of their actions before. For example, the Vice President Cevdet Yılmaz was Deputy Prime Minister, my Deputy Prime Minister in 2015. Similarly, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hakan Fidan, worked with me for many years, like Minister of Defense, Yaşar Güler, they work with me as well.
Chief of Staff.
Yes, Minister of and many others. So he realized one of the reasons is that we created an opposition. When I say we this time, I don't refer to 6 parties, but as future party, our party has created an alternative, together with Saadet Party, Deva Party. So this alternative forced him to go to the origin, to the origin of AK Party of early years. Because this time in the parliament, there is no only a secular CHP opposition. We will be there, around 35 members of parliament from 3 parties. They will be there this time to make an opposition from a conservative or from the perspective of traditional political values. So he tried to form a cabinet, some sort of a limited restoration. The question is, like Mehmet Şimşek, Minister of Finance. He was my Minister of Finance in 2016. Therefore, some people said this is in fact Davutoglu's cabinet. He removed all these.
Do you consider it as Davutoglu cabinet?
No, many of my former ministers are there, but he pushed them away. After my resignation, he tried to eliminate all the political figures who had relations with, not only with me, but with this political approach of democratic conservatism, because he wanted to have monopoly of power. The difference between me and my not only President Erdogan, but my former friend Erdogan, was that we started our political fight, our political struggle for a democratic country based on human rights and traditional values, including Islamic values. For us, transparency, rule of law, human dignity, these are not only modern values, but Muslim values of Islamic civilization. We try to have a democratic, a new political culture based on a clean politics and against corruption, a democratic politics against limitations and restrictions, and a society of welfare against poverty. These were the values we created. But Erdogan, after my resignation, and because of several influences in political system, he tried to transform AK Party and also Turkish political culture to an authoritarian character. And he preferred to work with Bahçeli, ultra-nationalist, exclusivist politics, and Perinçek, who is an atheist, Marxist, a secular, the ideological champion of 28 February, what we call very radical seculars. So they made a coalition of autocratic, authoritarian secularism, let me say conservatism or Islamism or nationalism. Now, this time, when after my resignation, he tried to remove all these former elite in order to have a loyal, less experienced, more ignorant, loyal followers of him. Now he tried to make a change after the election, because during the election campaign, he realized that it is impossible to win the election with the same cadre again. Now, question mark is there. Will these people in the cabinet free to act based on the values which we defended, or will he use them like he used me or other politicians for some months, for some years, then try to eliminate them after using them? This is like Mehmet Şimşek. He kicked him out, Minister of Finance. He's a professional. He kicked him out, blaming and accusing him as a man of interest. And his former Minister of Finance, Nurettin Nebati, accused him to be British spy. Now he came back. And will he be acting based on his own professional knowledge, or will he obey Erdogan's approach? This is the question mark.
What do you think, Your Excellency?
after having so many experiences with Erdogan, I think he will use these people until the municipal elections. If the policies are successful, he will say, this is my success. And if the policies will not be successful, then he will say, these are responsible for these people, Mehmet Şimşek and others are responsible. You see, my former policies were right. And after municipal elections, if he wins, he will he will appoint new ministers based on loyalty, blind loyalty, rather than quality and professional career.
Mr. Davutoglu, you know Mr. Erdogan very well. You were
of course,
friends, very close. You work together. What do you think? What do you think of him now? How do you describe him?
There is not just one Erdogan. Like many other political leaders, I have observed in the history. I am an academician of political history. In the history, you can see many similar cases, from idealism to Machiavellism. I have observed in my life not only Erdogan himself, but his team, his followers today, is one of the very specific case, and a very painful, for me to say this, a very painful case from idealism to Machiavellism. He can use anything for him to stay in power. But when we worked together with him, I was proud of him because we defended the same values. Many people do not know. I am an academician. I was not in politics. Do you know why did I involve politics?
Why?
Because,
why did you involve
yes,
in politics?
I rejected 3 times to be Minister of Foreign Affairs. And 3 times to be Member of Parliament. I was Chief Advisor and Ambassador until 2007. And 2007, he offered me to be Minister of Foreign Affairs after President Gül, after Minister Gül would be president. And I said no. And we decided to, and I said, I will go back to academics. Do you know when did I decide to come back? Because when there was a ban case against AK Party in 2008 March, and ban case against Erdogan, I came and I told him that now this is time, this is a war, a declaration of war against all of us and against democracy in Turkey. I am here to fight with you, to fight together against this autocratic approach. So I didn't become minister and prime minister just to have a position. I started politics, enter politics, to support Erdogan, to defend Erdogan against autocracy, against deep state's operations to ban AK Party. So therefore, what I see, this is a very special case of power corruption. Power corrupts.
Last one question on Erdogan. When was it the last time you met, and what did you talk?
It was 2018, March.
What did you talk about?
I gave him a 27-page report and spoke to him about the deteriorating situation in the party and in Turkey. I clearly said, even verified certain things, that the corruption is everywhere, and the values we have been defending, the Islamic values as well as modern democratic values, have been abolished. There is corruption everywhere, almost in every institution. There is nepotism, especially by him, by his family. State belongs to nation, not to one family, not to one group of people, not even to one party. State belongs to all citizens. So he should stop nepotism. He should fight against power, against corruption. And I also said that the basic values of human rights and the basic human rights, freedom of press, freedom of thought, freedom of demonstration, and all these are being negatively affected. There is a problem of justice. I gave a long report, and also on foreign policy issues, a long report, and I tried to, I said now it is a time of decision. Either we have to go to the direction of fighting against poverty, corruption, and restrictions for democratic values, or to go to autocracy. And I warned him not to make any coalition with Bahçeli, an ultra-nationalist, which would change the character of AK Party. Also, I warned him not to make any coalition with deep state actors of 1990s, like Perinçek, like many others. And it was, for me, the last chance for him. He preferred to be with atheistic, ultra-secularists and ultra-nationalist groups to have a full control of the system, rather than to work with his real friends like me. He preferred to be with Bahçeli instead of me, or with Perinçek instead of other leaders. This was my last meeting with him face to face. In 2019, we had a telephone call. Every Eid, I was calling him to congratulate. In 2019, Eid al-Adha, I talked to him. At that time, there was an election for municipal election in Istanbul. The first election was, was not declared as valid. So there was a decision of repeating the election. I was against this. He asked me to participate campaign for the second election. I said it was wrong to have the decision for second election, which is not fair, and I didn't accept this. So this was our last. I made some comments criticizing some of these policies in the party. But then they decided to expel me from the party with my friends, with my six of us, because of our clear position for political ethics. The basic difference between me and him, even when I was prime minister, was that I submitted a law of political ethics to the parliament, preventing politicians to use their position for economic interest. He said this is he will be not resigning, not signing this or endorsing this. So it was basically this. These are the last discussions we had with him.
Maybe this is the last question on domestic issues. So I heard today from some people that maybe there will be early election. We will not wait another 5 years before until we have election. A. B. As opposition, what are you preparing for the election? I mean, what's next for you?
Of course, in Turkey, sometimes when people ask to me, you cannot know two things in Turkey: your day of death and the day of election. In last 70 years, almost 80% of the elections has been conducted before the regular date. So you have to be ready for an early election always. But of course, in this system, it is in the hand of president himself. But I don't think that this government and President Erdogan can run the country in an efficient manner to solve the huge, deep economic crisis. I hope they can do, but generally, if he continues his way of running the country, it will be very difficult for him to have a success story in coming years. So for municipal election, we will see. Of course, all opposition parties now, they have internal consultations in their parties, like us as well. Now, 3 weeks has passed after the election, so we will make an assessment in our party. We made and we will continue to make. I am sure all opposition parties will do the same. They have some general congress of E-Party, CIHP, and us as well. Then we will see the new political atmosphere and decide what to do next. But the next step will be municipal election in March 2024. All of us, we will prepare ourselves for these elections.
And some people said Erdogan is preparing for the day after?
For the day after, what do you mean?
Like some people say that Mr. Erdogan is preparing for the day after Erdogan, who is going to succeed him.
After Erdogan, how will you define this? Of course, I don't think so. Erdogan wants to be in power or control the power, even if he himself is not in power, control the power till the end. Why? Because, I resigned as Prime Minister in one big time because I am not scared of anything, of any corruption case or any nepotism. No person in Turkey knows my family, my sons, my daughters, my son-in-law. My wife works, I work. We earned our life by ourselves. There is no single penny or there is no single accusation against us. Those leaders who have some reasons of fear to leave the power, they cannot leave the power. Unfortunately, today, in the system, there are many ministers, many politicians. If they leave the power, next day, they have to face some real cases against them. So Erdogan will try to control the power. I hope, of course, not as a rival politician, but as a former friend of Erdogan, I would suggest him to change his attitude, to make a real assessment of his life. How the political leaders will be remembered is important, not because of their early actions, but because of their last actions, they are being remembered. And Erdogan was, in early years when we were together, was one of the most successful leaders of modern Turkish history. And people loved him. But today people fear. Even they who vote for him, they voted for because of the psychology of fear. He is not gaining the hearts. He is trying to shaken the hearts. What if I was chief advisor of him, I was his minister, prime minister, we worked together. In those days, people supported Erdogan because of their love and affection to him. But now they are voting for Erdogan, either being scared of himself, of him, or being scared of another scenario or of another situation. I am in politics not because of any motive of coming to power for the sake of my own personal interest, because I left everything. I am an academician. I want to create a new atmosphere of human dignity. Today, the issue in Turkey is human dignity. No, people are getting poorer and poorer every day. And those who are close to Erdogan, they are getting richer and richer every day. I have the same lifestyle. I am living in the same house. My life standard is the same because everybody knows my salary, and I know my salary. I cannot be rich more than my salary. I am a statesman. But today, some people are living with the salaries lower than a wage of hunger. How? Therefore, I hope Erdogan will make an assessment. Can you imagine a former minister formed a company and bought materials from the company to her ministry. Can you imagine? Another minister has private hospitals. He himself is Minister of Health. Another minister has tourism companies. He is Minister of Tourism. How? Which Islamic value justifies this? We had a fight with an argument with him because I gave all of the gifts given to me, valuable gifts, millions of dollars, to the treasury. He said, these are personal gifts. Ministers can take it. I said, no. Prophet ﷺ did not say this. He asked the officer of zakat collector to give the gifts given to him to Baytul Mal. Now, this is the difference. Where are the values? Slogans are not values. He is using slogans, but he is betraying against our values. I am responsible to God, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to the nation. When I resigned as Prime Minister, I gave all of the gifts given to me, I gave to the treasury. This doesn't belong to me. Winning an election does not mean winning the heart of the people. Today I can walk without any security. I can walk in the street. Leftists, rightists, nationalists, Islamists, everybody says you are the most honest politician we have ever seen, because they know that I am living in the same house and my wife works, I am working. Important, the success of a politician is not how he has been praised when he is in power, but how he was received by the people when he leaves this power. Therefore, it is the last chance for Erdogan to change the attitude, to change his environment, to end nepotism.
Speaking about the Islamic values, Mr. Davutoglu, you were, at least you were called in the Arab world, now talking about the Arab world, that you were a bit one of the engineers or the engineering forces behind the Arab Spring.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what, more than 12 years passed, sitting in Ankara now, out of the government, you know, you worked as academician before, as a strategist before. So how would you see the Arab Spring? How was it? Where did it fail? Where did it succeed?
First of all, let me clarify. I am not an engineer of Arab Spring or anything. Arab Spring did emerge in Tunisia when a Tunisian youngster committed suicide and killed himself.
Burned himself.
But yeah, so that was the beginning. Why? Did we Turks or myself, did we ask to Arab young generation to raise their voices? No. Because there was a emerging global atmosphere, and Arab youth wanted to have their own voice to be heard. It is not because of me or because of anyone. This was the internal dynamics. Now, I never supported any intervention to any other national issues of another country. No. No case. I am, with my understanding of zero problems with neighbors, we didn't intervene. And I am still against any intervention. But if people in Libya or people in Egypt during Mubarak time, or Yemen or another countries or Tunisia, if these people wanted to have more freedom, more human dignity, a more policy of an honorable policy against Israel or whatever is all these Arab Spring main issues, it is their demand. But what I can say to these young people, whoever the Turkish young generation, whatever they deserve, Arab young generation deserve the same. whatever European young people demanded, Arabs or Turkish people today, many Turks are complaining, Turkish young generation complaining because of authoritarian approach of Erdogan. Because they want to have the same rights like Europeans, like other nations. This is their right. It is not our business. But we never, and I am also repeating, never support any intervention to another country. But if you ask me, what do you offer for Turkish young generation? I would say the same level of freedom, the same level of human dignity, like Europeans, like other generations everywhere in the world. If they think that they deserve more, they can raise their voice. And if there is no internal dispute, if people are happy living in a country, nobody can make any radical move there. Important is, it doesn't mean even democracy. Many Middle Eastern and Arab states may not be democratic. It is their choice. It is not our business. It is not, nobody can impose democracy or anything. But if those people, for example, when we had good relations with Bashar Assad, was Syria democratic? No. But Syrian people living in Syria were happy with Bashar Assad. There was no internal dispute, so we had excellent relations. Or same with Mubarak. We didn't support anyone. When there was not...
Did you explain, Mr. Davutoglu, yes, you're right, you did not engineer the Arab Spring. But the fact that the Arab Spring happened, now after 12 years, we saw different models. We saw the NATO intervention in Libya, we saw peaceful transformation in Egypt, Tunisia, we saw Yemen, we saw Syria, different models. It seems none of them succeeded.
Yes, unfortunately.
Why do you think
because you know, there was an established regime, and there were not well organized opposition. Because in these societies, sometimes even in Turkey, in Turkey the difference is that we had a long fight against military regimes, etc., etc. So there was some sort of a culture of opposition. Even today, despite of this autocratic approach, we have this culture of opposition. But in Arab societies, there was not such an organized culture of opposition. Now, what happened? If a wise leader in the Arab world help people and allow them to raise their voice without harming public order, that Arab leader would have been the greatest leader of this century. Therefore, we suggested to Bashar Assad just to allow opposition without harming or without ignoring public order. The problem in the Muslim society is not only Arab world. We have state authority, we have anarchy. Unfortunately, we Muslims, we didn't find a solution or a concept of public order. Either you have a state control or anarchy. When there was autocratic state control, people rebelled against these, like in Libya, etc. But if these movements were not able to establish a public order, anarchy came out. Libya has been divided, Syria has been, almost divided. In Egypt, there was another military intervention. The issue is public order. Public order means order belonging to all of us. Not only here, in Pakistan, everywhere in the Muslim world. Either state control, full control of state, or anarchy. What happened? If this full control of state has been threatened and transformed to anarchy, terrorist groups manipulated and provocated this anarchy, like Daesh or other groups in Syria or others. And the people were shocked that either a regime using chemical weapons or terrorist groups. then whoever has more power win the battle, but Arab people lost the battle altogether. What we can achieve, what we can do. I want to underline that I never supported any propaganda or exporting democracy. No. Every society has its own dynamic. But if leaders are able to establish a public order, people will not rebel. Many societies today, they are not maybe democratic, but there is a public order. There is some sort of contract, social contract between leaders and people. But unfortunately, in the Muslim world, either full state control, or no public order. Arab Spring, if there was a success story, in Tunisia for some time there was a success story because of Ghannouchi's position and some sort of reconciliation. Again, we need in the Muslim society, there is no nation with one entity or one sectarian character. Iraq, multi-sectarian, multi-ethnic. Syria, multi-sectarian, multi-ethnic. Turkey, multi-sectarian, multi-ethnic. We call Arab state Syria, but there are Kurds. We call Turkey Turkish state, but there are Arabs or Kurds. All of us, we had a historic background of multi-ethnic, multi-sectarian character. How can you run such a society? You can run only if you develop a concept of equal citizenship. Therefore, in Turkey, opposition has been misused. I supported Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, a Kurdish Alevite, in order to show that, yes, I am a Sunni Turk, I am the majority. But Kurds, I am a Turk, I always say I am a Turk, very typical Turkish tribe, let me say, from Konya. But the rights of Kurds, I will defend. I am a Sunni, but the rights of Alevites, I will defend. Otherwise, you cannot unite a nation. But in Iraq, Shiite prime minister, Kurdish president, or in Syria, Alevite president, this is not the way how to run the country. I am criticizing our experience as well. This is not imposing democracy to other nations. This is our destiny. We have to respect each other. No intervention to other countries' internal affairs, but every country has to respect to their citizens. A dynasty, yes, it is their choice. We cannot intervene. If they are happy, but if there is a dispute, like what happened in Syria, as a neighbor, you have been affected, we have been affected by this because of refugees, etc. When Syria was able to have public order, there is no need to have any problem with them. So, in short, Arab Spring.
Has it failed? The Arab Spring. Do you believe that the Arab Spring failed?
Let me say, everybody failed. There is no winner. In history, in 10 years' time, you cannot judge. Unfortunately, all of us, we failed.
You feel that the Arab Spring failed and you personally failed?
No, not me. This is not personal fight. Arab Spring failed, but those regimes which were established, or those who came instead of Arab Spring, they are not also victors. They failed as well. Do you think there is order now in Yemen, or a viable state in Libya, or in Syria? Do you think Bashar Assad is successful, did not fail? Or in Tunisia, you think that we were all proud of Tunisian effort to have a constitutional system? Who has won? If we say I won, you lost, this is the wrong approach. We Muslims, we Turks and Arabs, yes, but this is not the end of the story. Why I am in politics today, not to allow Turkey to be another autocratic system in the world or in the region. This is my duty. My responsibility is basically to my nation. And therefore, I am trying to fulfill my responsibility to my nation. I will not allow Turkish people to be divided by sectarian, by ethnic lines, and I will never allow Turkish nation to be subordinated or to be controlled by a system preventing human dignity, allowing corruption. Corruption is everywhere. Is it a success? Usually when we think about success or failure, the perception is wrong. We think that if somebody has power, he or she is successful. No.
One is that on Assad. I can't remember, 16 or 26 times you met with him.
Oh, many times.
Yeah, but now Assad has been rehabilitated by some Arab countries. He attended the Arab League. How do you feel about this? A. B. If the opposition won, if Mr. Davutoglu won, he promised to visit Damascus.
Okay.
Maybe you would have visited Damascus as well. How do you feel about these two?
First of all, for me, important is not personalities. Important for me, the most important is the destiny of a nation. If a country's population, almost half of them are refugees, 1/5 or 1/10 being killed in civil war. This is, and Syrian people, you are right, I visited Syria several times, more than 60 times. And I was I was mediator between Israel and Syria, between Bashar Assad and Ehud Olmert. I was in Lebanon in 2008, and I worked with Syria to bring for the election of Michel Suleiman as president. And on many other issues, we worked together with Syria. And I am proud of my experience with Syrian people, with our Syrian brothers and sisters in those days and even today. All Syrians are our brothers and sisters, regardless of their ethnic or religious background or sectarian background, because we share the same geography, we share the same history. I feel pain, and I still feel this pain when Syrian cities like Aleppo, Hama, Homs were bombarded by air, by barrel bombs, or by chemical weapons, or attacked by terrorist groups. I cannot separate pains. I cannot say regime used chemical weapons, but just ignore Daesh. No. People suffered because of Daesh, because of the regime's attitude. What is the right way? In fact, I think the only success of United Nations during Syrian crisis was the UN Security Council Resolution 2254, 18th of December 2015, when I was Prime Minister. I supported that. And in this resolution, it was identified that there is a need of a transitional government composed of Syrian regime and opposition groups as a nation reconciliation process. And refugees will go back after this formation of transitional government. Either this status quo will continue, Bashar Assad has been, you said, rehabilitated, but still a significant part of Syria is under the control of either opposition or Kurdish groups, etc. Now, there is a real need of a nation reconciliation for Syria, not excluding anyone. Yes, if Kılıçdaroğlu won the election, the opposition, our position was clear, and it was declared by the documents that Resolution 2254 should be implemented. If Bashar Assad implement this resolution, of course, we will develop our relations. Why not? With all the parties in Syria, not only with the regime. But what is the objective of this diplomatic relation? What will be the orientation of these agreements or relations? One day, I hope, I pray, and if there is any chance for me to play a role for a real peaceful Syria, peace for everybody in Syria, not only one ethnicity, one sect, one group, one family, but for all Syrians. And not only those who are living in Syria, but those who are outside Syria as refugees, like millions of them are in Turkey now. A peaceful Syria where they will go is my ideal. I hope one day we can achieve this ideal.
International politics, this is the last one. International politics, because you are not just Turkish, Spanish specialist or Arab specialist. When it comes to the international, the global politics, this is the big picture. We see now, I think there is big transformation. We see war between, Russia and Ukraine. We see tension between China and America over Taiwan. But at the same time, we see Blinken visited China the other day, and maybe the Chinese counterpart will visit America. How do you see the whole world now?
I wrote a book published by Cambridge University Press in 2020. The title is Systemic Earthquake and the Struggle for World Order. In this book, I wrote after my resignation, I wrote 2 English books and 5 Turkish books. In this book, I tried to analyze. Basically, my approach was that in the world today, we have a systemic earthquake, systemic disorder. If you have a crisis, but a functioning system, you can manage this crisis. But if the system itself is producing crisis, it is even much more difficult. After the Cold War, we had 4 what I call earthquakes, big crisis, comprehensive crisis. One was geopolitical earthquake in 1991, dissolution of Soviet Union. Second was 2001, 9/11. Third was big economic crisis, 2008. And fourth was Arab Spring, which dissolved national structures like Arab Spring, national economies like economic crisis, and also made international organization ineffective. Now, because of this accumulation of crisis and because of this accumulation of earthquakes, let me say, we have a systemic earthquake today. Russia-Ukraine crisis goes back to 1990s. Afghanistan crisis goes back to 9/11. Many instabilities in the Middle East goes back to Arab Spring. And the general international economic crisis goes back to 2008. Now, how can we achieve this? How can we overcome this crisis? Until a full reinstitutionalization of world organizations, starting with UN reform, it will be difficult for the international system to resolve the internal dynamics. And until we achieve certain values of humanity everywhere, everywhere in the world, respect for these values of humanity, including climate crisis, including ethical crisis or technological transformation, we have to have a new set of values to which all of the nations respect, like Human Rights Declaration of United Nations. Without having such a framework, this type of crisis will continue to emerge. Blinken's visit to China is important. Chinese premier's visit to Germany is important because China should not be excluded, but should be, is one of the rising power. In my book, Strategic Depth, I said 19th century was century of Europe. 20th century, second half was Atlantic century. The first half of 21st century will be Asian century, Second half will be African century. Yes, the rise of Asian powers in general.
The next will be Asian century.
Asian. We are in the phase of rise of Asian, and then African. Not on African nations, but also struggle on Africa. So the global change will readjust international order. Either we will be having a wise approach, wise leaders, like leaders who establish United Nations, to reframe this international order,
Multipolar system.
yes, multipolar system, because UN Security Council permanent members are out of Second World War still. Second World War has passed. Cold War passed. Many other wars passed. Still, 5 states have special power in United Nations Security Council.
Some of them are
Yes.
irrelevant.
Irrelevant, yes. So there is a change of reformation of international organizations. There is a need of regional order, including Middle East. All nations should respect to each other. I am very happy that today Saudi-Iranian relation is improving. I am very happy that Saudis and Egyptians are talking, Egyptians and Iranians are talking. I am very happy that Turkey is improving relations with many powers. So we need to talk for a viable regional order. Same should be valid for Black Sea. Russia and Ukraine should agree on a regional framework. This is regional, national reconciliation, like in Syria or in Iraq or in Ukraine, are important. 3 levels: national, regional, and global. These levels should be restored with a new approach.
Is that the intellectuals say always superpower will never ever lose its superpower without a war. Mm-hmm. So do you think America will lose this seat without a war?
Yeah, today the character of war has changed. That was the case when the war was battlefield wars. Today there is a war, of technological war, economic war, and there are several phases of wars and competition. So nobody should expect a new war for change of power shift, but economic transformation, the role of technology, and artificial intelligence. These are the new methods of competition, not just battlefield wars.